afternoon and welcome to ATN Society Watch. This is a program where we ventilate societal issues, we give them aggregate attention with a view to preferring solutions that will benefit humanity. Let's go through the headlines. Gunmen abduct 3 INEC officials. Viral story, NBA faults creators' forced marriage judgment. Child rape, Senate passes bill imposing life imprisonment. ASU strike, NLC declares no pay, no work. We are open for sponsorship of this program, jingles and advert placements, news and events coverage, personality, society and political interviews, product service promotion, and commercials. Watch us live on www.atlanticnetwork.tv. We're also on Avo TV channel 205, Limex TV platform, Ifestec platform, Apple TV, Niger TV, and Iroko TV. Connect with us on all our ATN socials. Subscribe, like, and share. Facebook and YouTube, Atlantic Television Network. Instagram and TikTok, Atlantic TV Network 1. We're on X and Atlantic TV Net. We'll go on a break. When we get back, I'll introduce my guest and we'll dive right into the reports. Please stay with us. Welcome back and thank you so much for staying with us. You're still tuned into Atlantic Television Society Watch. Joining me via Zoom to dive into this critical discourse is Ehichoya Ikide, an OAP and a public affairs analyst. We're so glad to have you join us.
I'm glad to be on here.
Let's go right into the discourse. Gunmen suspected to be kidnappers have abducted 6 passengers, including 3 staff members of the Independent National Electoral Commission (INEC) along the Aloma axis in Kogi State. The victims, identified as Chineye Oji, Adamaka Ani, and Catherine Temung, were traveling from Abuja to Anambra State for preparations ahead of the governorship election when their Sienna minibus was ambushed on Tuesday afternoon, October 21. According to the bus driver, the kidnappers blocked the highway, opened fire on the vehicle, and shattered its windshield. All passengers, including his wife, were taken into the bush, except the driver and an elderly woman who were released due to her mobility issues. The woman recounting the incident said, "We were going to Oka when they attacked us. It happened shortly after 3 p.m. We left Utako by 9 a.m. and stopped briefly at Lokoja to eat. The kidnappers released me and the driver, but took the others. Sources revealed that the INEC staff members were deployed to Anambra to print voters' registers and election materials in preparation for the November 8th governorship election. Security agencies have been alerted and investigations are ongoing, though the kidnappers are yet to make any ransom demands. The attack raises fresh concerns over the safety of election officials and security of Nigeria's electoral materials ahead of the polls. This is a breaking story. I know that this won't be the first time we are talking about, the high rate of crime and kidnapping in the country. But what are your thoughts on this report?
I feel affected because this is the routes I used to travel whenever I'm going back home to Abuja. Stopping by in Kogi State to eat is always a staple of the journey. So this is indeed a sad one to hear that things have deteriorated to such an extent, because I'm aware of the Kaduna Highway. That's the part where most people travel not to avoid, because it's usually dangerous. Right. But now it has moved into broad daylight kidnapping, where they are blocking the highway in Kogi State and taking over six people hostage, which is genuinely, it's a sad one that the country has fallen this far.
Right. Now, Kogi has been a lot in the news lately as regards the high level of kidnapping going on. That's not an isolated case as regards Kogi is not the only state that is, suffering this high span of kidnapping. But for the fact that particular direction, like you said, it's a staple that everybody that goes through must take that particular way. Why do you think we don't have security personnel and forces mounting those areas to make sure such things don't happen?
Honestly, I call it a lapse in judgment, because there are certain highways and roads that are critical to Nigeria's movement and the movement of Nigerians.
Right.
So if we're having such cases whereby these things are now not just growing, but growing in significance and scale based on the areas that are now being affected, then it's a lapse on the part of those that are in charge of our security infrastructure. Right. Because there are certain roads that that should be guarded. They hold certain significance. That this is a place where there have been reports. These things are not isolated incidents. There have been 1-2 incidents that have occurred, but they haven't been with the significance that they merit. Which is why this continues to happen, and it seems to embolden these kidnappers to go on more and more erratic sprees, just like what we have now.
Now, over the past few days on the news, I don't know if you've stumbled across the video of a lady that has been threatened. She was given till 5 p.m. yesterday for her family actually to pay 20 million naira, of which she seemingly said that her family do not have that money. It's a viral video. It's all over social media. When you look at that video and weigh it side by side with the president's speech as regard him saying that we are winning the war on insecurity, what are your thoughts on that? Do you think we're really winning the war when you scale it with what we see day to day over the president's speech?
There seems to be a large disconnect between the president and the citizens. There seems to be a very, very, very large disconnect between what the president says and what people tend to experience. Because now we have so many cases, broad daylight kidnappings, whether it's communal clashes, whether it's kidnappings on the road, on federal highways. It just doesn't seem to be abated. It doesn't seem like there is a solution. So when you hear the president come out and issue statements where he's stating, the war is coming to an end, or we're combating it to a severe enough extent, the disconnect is not connecting, because how is it that the people that are expressing this reality are facing a different reality from what the Grand Commander of the Federal Republic seems to be telling them?
Right.
And is he trying to... Okay, go on.
No, I was listening to you, please.
Okay, yeah. Is he trying to state that people's reality is not, their current reality, and that the situation is actually better than people that are living the reality are stating it to be?
Right. You are a Nigerian, and you live in Nigeria. You're a Nigerian in Nigeria. A friend of mine usually say, this is our Nigeria collectively, right? When you look at this case of kidnapping, you likely, rightly said that these kidnappers, they've been emboldened over the years. I mean, they now actually have videos, especially with the viral video I was just talking to you about, where this video was somehow posted on social space. It didn't fly into the media. It didn't fly into the internet. Somehow a channel was used to post this. Now, when you think about that, and given the high rise of tech and all of these ideologies that can be used to track these criminals and nail this situation to the bud, what do you think is lacking? What do you think has, why do you think our security agencies haven't been able to nail this at least at the barest minimum? And put into cognizance that, many societies are trailed with several things. There's no perfect society that you say is completely devoid of crime, right? But when you look at it, certain parts of the problems in several societies are managed with the emboldenment of these kidnappers. As I yesterday, after this report was, trending at the time, that INEC officials have been, kidnapped and on their way to prepare for the Anambra State elections holding on November 8th. Another set of people did make videos that they were sharing that were shared on social media, where they packed all of their buses at the pathway because they said kidnappers were still in front. I mean, do you think that we have used the appropriate tools and technical know-how, and it's just these kidnappers have been so emboldened that it is now bigger than the Nigerian government? Why do you think this hasn't been nipped in the bud?
That's a very interesting one. Personally, I'm into project management, specifically IT. Okay. And I am indeed aware that from social media posts, we can indeed track your location. My company, we can run things like that, where we find out people's location from social media posts. It's not particularly what we do because we create software, but we are educated enough on how this can be done.
Right.
And it brings me back to a very interesting statement that has been going viral recently of Sani Abacha, where he stated, any act of terrorism or any terroristic act or terror group that lasts more than 24 hours, the government has a hand in it. Now, this is not point fingers at the government and say, oh, they are sponsoring acts of terrorism, which indeed there have been reports of government officials sponsoring acts of terrorism. Here we have now these criminals, bandits, they come out to peace meetings. They call it peace meetings and peace negotiations.
Fully armed.
With the government, with fully armed, with multiple cartridges, multiple magazines or many rounds of ammunition all around their chests. And they say, okay, they are coming from them. And you see them in groups of 30, 40. They are coming out to make demands. Like, the government doesn't do this, they will do this, they will start attacking people here, they will do that. Traditionally, a sovereign nation should not be negotiating with terrorists.
Right.
Should not be negotiating with terrorists. But what we have is a case where these people come out, they grant interviews, they post online, we know where they are, but no decisive action, no action, matter of fact, is even being taken. Now we come to the issue of kidnappers. Recently, the president posted a list of people that were pardoned for crimes. My colleague was in that list. His family rejected the list because they said his name was Mushinde with criminals and kidnappers. And truly, one of the most notorious kidnappers in Nigeria that was caught a couple years ago and sentenced to a long time in prison was indeed released. So what kind of precedent does that set?
Right.
Because now you are telling people that, oh, your acts of crime and criminality can be pardoned, can be forgiven. You are giving people that are already emboldened more ammunition to go off of. So there's a huge disconnect between the stories we are being told and the reality on the ground. And I think nearly not enough is being done to try to combat the issues that we face in terms of security.
When you say not enough is being done, the primary function of government, as it were, is to make sure that the citizens are safe. At what point did we have this disconnect that is seemingly feels like, the government thinks a different thing and the citizens think a different thing. At what point do we have the disconnect, and how do we move forward from here? What strategies do you think should be put in place for us to nip this in the bud? The person yesterday crying with a gun pointed to her head, someone's sister, someone's child, a citizen of Nigeria, her only crime is going to Edo State as a youth corper. How do we nip this in the bud?
Right. Well, it's a rather interesting one, but I feel there needs to be consequence.
Okay.
For so long, the military leaders of Nigeria have gotten away with incompetence. That's what I'm going to put it plainly, utter incompetence. Whether it's the police, whether it's military, there should be, everybody that steps into that seat, personally in my opinion, everybody that steps into that seat should be given 30 days. You have a 30-day ultimatum. If you want to see numbers going down, that is the only way you retain that seat. If you are not cut out for it, then you kindly step aside. So somebody that has better ideas, because there seems to be a lack of idea. There seems to be a lack of how to approach the topic. From all the military leaders we have, from all the various posts and offices that are supposed to be in charge of Nigerian security, there is not enough. I feel they are too calm. For a country that we experience mass killings, in most, we stated earlier that most countries have their own issues.
Right.
But for a country like Nigeria, where we hear, 200 people were killed, nowadays it's become so commonplace, 200 people were killed, you swipe to the next headline, tragic, you swipe to... In most countries of the world, if 10 people are killed, national outrage. People are resigning, people are getting fired. But it seems to be in Nigeria, 200 people were killed, wow. Anyways, let's move on from that topic. And everybody just goes on with their day. It is not giving the level of significance that the conversation merits. So I think, first off, you have to put our military leaders, our servicemen on a hot seat. We should invest a lot in hardware, because these terrorists, whoever is sponsoring them, appears to be very wealthy. They have high caliber weapons. They do not suffer from a lack of supply. Why do we not know to move these things in large quantities? How do they get these things shipped to them?
Right.
How do they receive all these guns? How do they receive? Whose account is getting credited? Okay, you are paying ransom. You are paying it into somebody's account. Whose name is showing up? Why can't the account be frozen? Why can it not be tracked? These are things that basic tech companies can do. A lot of basic tech companies or cybersecurity firms can take care of these things. So I feel there are indeed solutions. But for whatever reason, the government seems to be more interested in pushing a narrative that, you're not as unsafe as you think, or you're not as unsafe as the reality you are living. Trust us. We don't live your reality, but just trust us.
Really, really, really sad times ahead. And hopefully, they'll get the INEC officials out, because I don't know what's going to happen with the people that were living where they are and headed for the Anambra State elections. Thank you so much for your insight on the report. Nigerian Bar Association has strongly condemned an order by a Kano magistrate court mandating two popular TikTok creators, Idris Mai Bushiara and Basira Ya Gadu, to marry within 60 days. The controversial order reportedly followed viral video showing the duo in romantic gestures, which the Kano State Films and Video Censorship Board described as indecent and contrary to the state's moral and religious values. Reacting to the development, NBA President Mazi Alpha Musigwe said the reported court's directive represents a grave misunderstanding of the limits of judicial authority under the Nigerian Constitution. Marriage, by its very nature, is a voluntary union between consenting adults. It cannot be imposed as a form of punishment, moral correction, or judicial remedy, the statement read. The NBA maintained that no Nigerian court has the legal power to compel anyone into marriage, stressing that such an order is unconstitutional and violates fundamental rights to personal liberty, dignity, and privacy as enshrined in the 1999 Constitution as amended. The association called for an immediate review of the alleged ruling and urged the judiciary to uphold constitutional safeguards against moral coercion. To ensure accountability, the NBA Citizens' Liberties Committee and Women's Forum have been tasked with monitoring the case. The court must remain the bastion of justice and protectors of constitutional rights, not instruments for enforcing social conformity or moral compulsion, the NBA added. I don't know if you saw the video of these content creators, and I really want to get your thoughts on this.
I think it seems we have our priorities misplaced as a nation. That's the best way to put this, misplaced priority. Because I think it's the same Kano State that recently they inaugurated over almost 400 marshals to tackle phone thefts. So they set up a separate marshal line to tackle phone thefts in the state. And now the judiciary is going after people posting videos that they tend to be, a violation of the moral and religious values upheld in the state. Now, the very argument of the NBA is that this order is unconstitutional. If that is the case, why is it even up for discussion? Why is it even a possibility that an unconstitutional ruling can be given by a Nigerian court of law? Is the judge not educated on the Constitution and the rights of citizens? Because, like the NBA statement said, marriage by its very nature is a voluntary union between consenting adults. So it cannot be imposed as a form of punishment, whether moral correction or even a judicial remedy. They are further went on to call it unconstitutional, unlawful. If this is indeed the case, why is a court granting an unconstitutional and unlawful and violating personal liberty and dignity? How has the court... Okay.
What exactly did you see this video at any point?
No, I'm not particularly online, so I choose the kind of content I do very
right. But that's very important for one's mental health, right? Now, I think the video basically just showed the man, let's call it pretending to propose to this lady. There was no how do I call it? There was no familiar touch as regards now extending a little bit forward to maybe kissing and all of those that you say, okay, this doesn't look right per religion for people, with that sort of strong religious background. And if it did not progress to this point, I want to equally ask you, how many laws do you think govern Nigeria? Do you think we are all governed by just the Constitution of Nigeria when you put it side by side with the fact that we also have Sharia law and the law guiding everybody else?
At the end of the day, with regards to how many laws, I feel too many, but not enough enforcement. Now, with regards to Sharia law and things of that nature, we are all under Nigeria. Okay. The Nigerian Constitution should be the final, the be-all and end-all when it comes to enforcing laws. If a law goes against the Constitution, because the Constitution is what guides governance, is what guides most policies that are spun up by, whether be it the Senate, the executive, whatever policy that decides to come up, should be in line with the Constitution.
Right.
So if we're going to state, okay, we're abiding by Sharia law, when we now have a case where Sharia law and the Constitution of Nigeria are opposing, which should come out on top as a sovereign nation that we claim to be, which of these two laws should hold more weight, should hold more water, should hold more significance? And in my opinion, it should be the Constitution. It should, in fact, be the Constitution. So if a judgment or a ruling is unconstitutional, whatever your principles or beliefs might be, if you are carrying out an unconstitutional judgment and the Constitution is stating plainly, this is unconstitutional, this is a violation, we cannot now say, okay, this law should outweigh the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. And with regards to the actions, I didn't know that it was merely him, going on his knees and pretending to propose. I thought there was a little bit more. But if that's the case, then quite frankly, I don't, for the life of me, maybe my beliefs are not as hard as that, but for the life of me, I cannot see why this should be imposed. But it is the NBA, like they've said, they're going to make sure to follow up with the case and try to see to the best that this is indeed redacted, which it should be, in my opinion, because it's unconstitutional, it's unlawful, and it's a violation.
Thank you so much for your insight on that report. Nigerian Senate has passed the landmark bill prescribing life imprisonment for anyone found guilty of sexually defiling minors, signaling a tougher legal stance against child sexual abuse. The bill stipulates that any man or woman who engages in sexual intercourse with a child will face life imprisonment without the option of a fine. Presenting the motion, Senator Adams Oshomole Edo North emphasized that child defilement should be treated more severely than rape due to the vulnerability of the victims. A minor is a child who cannot give consent and whose life can be permanently damaged by such act. Those involved in defilement deserve a severe punishment. Oshomole said initially proposing a 20-year jail term without an option of a fine. However, a majority of senators rejected this proposal in favor of a harsher penalty. Senator Mohammed Adamu Aliero, Kebbi Central, moved on an amendment recommending life imprisonment as a punishment for anyone, male or female, found guilty of defiling a minor. I propose that the punishment for defilement of minors be imprisonment regardless of the offender's gender, Aliero said. The Senate adopted Aliero's amendment, officially passing the bill prescribing life imprisonment for child defilers and pedophiles. Lawmakers say the new measure aims to strengthen child protection, serve as a strong deterrent, and ensure justice for young victims of sexual violence. The bill is expected to be transmitted to the House of Representatives for concurrence before it proceeds to the President for assent. One thing I want to find out from you, Ehi, when you look at this report is this. What is the legal age? What is a child to you by this definition of this particular law? What is a child? Do you think as a people we've been able to define fully, concretely, what a child is? And now I'll give you a little bit of reference. The Child Rights Act of 2003 did say a child is anyone below the age of 18. Do you think we have been able to define and enforce what a child is in relation to this new bill? Let's talk about it.
Okay, I like to go based on established principles and legal laws.
Okay.
Legally, the legal age for a child or a minor is from 17, at least from 18 below.
Okay.
18 below, known as a child. Then 18 above, you've entered into adulthood and you're now an adult, that you're responsible for the consequences of your actions, and whatever action you choose to take at that point. So, but if you speak to a lot of people, there are parents, a kid, someone that's up to 25, they're still their baby, still their child. So, it's still their baby, they still see that person as their child, that young kid. So legally, the age of consent is 18 because that age is accepted. Okay, when you're 18, you're responsible for bearing the consequences of whatever choice you choose to make or not make. So, but in line with this bill, I feel it's a welcome development. And the fact that the Senate went ahead to reject Adams Oshomole's proposal, where he wanted it to be 20 years, to now moving it to life imprisonment, just goes to show the gravity of the situation. It goes to show just how serious the conversation is, the topic is. Because like you said, this is something that can ruin the life of a child at an age where they are not able to give consent.
Right. Now, personally, I do agree with you, especially when you mentioned that this is a very good bill that has been passed, because I would say I've had the opportunity of interviewing a 5-year-old that was abused. So it wasn't, she doesn't know what rape is, but she knows what pain is, right? And when I saw this bill and went through, the tenets of the bill, I was excited. But a little bit of a drag back. The reason I asked you what a child was according to the Nigerian law is to say this. Why is it that in certain traditions and in certain customs, children, and in certain religions, children under 12 will still be given out for marriage? Do you think, like we're talking about the laws previously, do you think that we should, as a people and as Nigerians, enforce the age of consent at 18, enforcing it to the letter? Not that many of the arguments I saw online when I, did go through this report and just wanted to take on people's thoughts. The argument is this. This is for a selected Nigerian, a few selected Nigerians. There are still other Nigerians that, based off of religion, based off of tradition, will still go ahead and marry children that are 11 years, that are 12 years old, and they will still come out to the public and will say nothing is going to happen. Now, recently, a girl killed herself because her father was trying to make her marry his friend. And she didn't want to do that. But she couldn't necessarily turn it down, and she had to, take her life instead of going that route. Do you think this bill is going to stand the test of time, fit ground, and hold all Nigerians accountable?
During earlier on in the program, I said what we have laws in Nigeria. What we lack is enforcement. That is what we lack for the most part. Enforcement, or we lay down rules and regulations. Now, when it comes to the topic of people's faiths and the customs and tradition, I've already said this. Mm-hmm. The Federal Capital Territory of Nigeria has a constitution. There is a laid down law for how Nigerians should behave in Nigeria.
Okay.
When any other sets of rules and regulations and customs and traditions are in disagreement to what is laid down in the Constitution, the Constitution should hold more water, should hold more weight, should hold more gravity, should be more impactful to the conversation.
Okay.
And unfortunately, it seems like we don't necessarily practice that. We don't give the Constitution the respect we should accord it as citizens or as per enforcement agents. So the laid down age is 18. Anybody that does anything contrary is in fact opposing the Constitution of Nigeria, and there should in fact be consequences for such an action.
Right, including child marriage. When you weigh all of this, is child marriage included? Should we include the clause of child marriage? Marrying a child, does that now necessarily, would this bill be enforced if a 40-year-old man, for example, a 25-year-old man, for example, goes ahead to marry a minor? From this report,
I believe it.
Do you think this bill is going to be enforced? Or this bill is just for raping minors and not for people that marry minors?
That's a very interesting distinction to make. Because I believe they are not exactly separated. Because right. Like Adam Oshomole said, at that age, they are not able to give consent.
Absolutely.
They are not able to give consent. So any intimate act engaged in with someone that cannot give consent is in fact assault.
Right.
Or rape. It is in fact, by definition, assault or rape. But someone cannot give consent, but you choose to go ahead and engage in such an act with such a person. So the concept of will it just be applied to child assaulters and child rapists or people that abuse children versus people that just get married to children? In the context of marriage, this actually take place. It has now moved from just child marriage to harming a child, engaging in an act with a child that the child could not consent to. So I do not believe there are different conversations. I believe it should apply across the board. The age of consent is 18. If you really want to marry that child, you wait until that child can make that decision.
Right.
And then more than likely it's going to lead to rejection. That's why they feel the need to do it when the child is so young and has no say. But then, by definition, if you are doing it when the child has no say, then you have in fact infringed upon the rules, at least this very law that has been passed by the Senate, or that is being passed by the Senate.
Thank you so much for your insight on that report. Labour Congress, NLC, and its affiliate unions in the education sector have declared a no-pay, no-work policy in response to the federal government's no-work, no-pay stance on the ongoing 2-week warning strike by the Academic Staff Union of Universities, ASU. At a meeting held on Monday, NLC President Joe Ajero said the unions have resolved to act as one body in addressing the persistent issues affecting the education sector. The unions, including ASU, SSANU, NAAT, ASUP, SSANIP, ASURI, and COESU gave the federal government a 4-week ultimatum to conclude the renegotiations of the 2009 agreement and address other pending issues. Ajero accused the government of repeatedly violating agreements and instigating crises that led to strikes. He emphasized that future negotiations must involve officials with clear mandate and accountability. The era of signing agreements and renegotiating and threatening unions is over, Ajero replied. It's 4 weeks. If after 4 weeks there is no resolution, the NLC will mobilize all unions nationwide for total action. He also stated that the NLC would launch a national campaign to demand sustainable funding for education, adherence to UNESCO's recommended 25 to 26% budget allocation for the sector, and respect for workers' rights to collective bargaining. According to him, the No Pay, No Work declaration is a direct response to the government's failure to honor its commitment and continuous disregard for fair labor practices. This is the federal government did come to say no work, no pay. I mean, the Minister of Education said if you go on strike, you join the body of strike. He called on all the VCs and said these people are not going to get paid. But now we have the NLC joining in this to say no pay, no work. Do you think that we are going to get into this and see an end where everybody is pacified and the required outcomes are made, or we are still going to be talking about this next year where we will likely say for 17 years ASU has been making demands that the government hasn't met? Let's talk about it.
Well, it's rather unfortunate that a country such as Nigeria, with the resources we hold such important aspects or important individuals with such disdain. I'm going to call it disdain. There is no other adjective to describe what it feels like when you take people that traditionally, if any of these people were teaching abroad, then you don't have to go far. Let's say Ghana. They are revered. They are treated with such respect. They are held as scholars are held in the greatest light. They are viewed as the people that paved the way for a brighter future, and they are treated. They are compensated as such. But then we come to Nigeria, and it seems that we are doing them a favor by giving them the bare minimum, which it shouldn't be the case. We give them the bare minimum, and then we expect them to do all this work, and then we don't even pay them the bare minimum that we have agreed to give them. The bare minimum that was agreed upon is not being paid. It's not being enforced. Like he stated, we will finish the negotiation, then you go back and you renege on what we've already agreed upon. It's just been going on for such a long time. But ultimately, the people that are suffering it are indeed the students. Remember back to 2020 when there was an 8+ month strike.
Oh, yes. So
many academic calendars where, till today, a lot of institutions are still reeling from the damage that did to the academic calendar. We now have a situation whereby a lot of institutions have people from two potential sets clash in one set specific. Like I personally know a department where there are almost 700 or more than 700 because of the waiting, and then they now admitted a new set and we joined them, and it became a whole thing. Now the class had to be split into two for them to act. Now the stress that the lecturers have to go through in order to, you're teaching you first start class of over 300, you're teaching the second class is over 300. That stress is not even accounted for. It's not accounted for. Their normal rates are not even paid. Probably in a society that works, there will be bonuses. But they can't even ask for bonuses because they agreed upon the fixed rates. They are not seeing it, they are not getting it. We have a backlog of months and months and months where people go without pay, and then you pay 1 month, and then you forget about them for a while. And now you're trying to say, oh, no work, no pay. So what happened to the months and months of work that have gone without pay? If you're trying to swap over from, oh, no pay, no work, to no work, no pay, so the work that has been done over the past couple of months, why don't they get compensated for those ones? And then we can now be, okay, we can now talk about the case of, okay, now if you don't work, now that we've settled you, if you actually don't work, like, you will choose not to pay.
Right.
There's already a backlog. Pay the backlog, then we can move on. If you want to change the policy, they can sit down around the table and have that discussion. But at the end of the day, the people that are suffering the most are Nigerian students. In the University of Port Harcourt, there are a lot of students that I personally know that are waiting on their defense. But now the school is closed. The strike might continue for an extended period, according to what has been said, the statement put out by the NLC. The strike might continue for a much longer period. So these people are in limbo. Are they in school? Are they out of school? It's an unfortunate.
It's really unfortunate. I want to draw your attention a little bit to other quarters of this matters, which I would really like to share with you before we wrap up the show. Do you know that a professor in a university in Nigeria earns between 500,000 naira to 600,000 naira? That is their base. That is their base salary. I mean, that is the honest take home for being a professor in Nigeria. But Governor Umoeno did mention that his PAs earn at least 1 million naira, right? It's made me, whenever I see the confrontation with academia and lecturers coming up to make out this outcry, I want to ask you, when you look at this base salary that I just mentioned, and it gets lower, for if you're like a senior lecturer, that means it's lower than 500. If you're an assistant lecturer, and it just keeps going low all the way, right? Now, when you look at this, I was privy to ask a professor I know a few weeks ago, what then is the purpose of academia? But just for the discourse for this show, why do you think eventually ASU for 16 years, right? Why do you think they've succumbed to the federal government to say, okay, let's go back to the class when these demands from the 2009 agreement, pardon me, please, aren't met? That's on one hand. Why do you think ASU have succumbed a number of times and went back into the classroom? On the other hand, why do you think the government has refused to meet up with this demand?
It's a rather unfortunate one. Because now, I feel there has been a lot of trust on the part of ASU displayed towards the government. Because now, the NLC is stating there have been agreements made, but we have these conversations, we have this roundtable discussion, we reach these conclusions. After everything has been agreed upon and signed upon, you go back and tell us, oh, this is not feasible, we are no longer doing this. But at this point, they've already decided, okay, we're going to open up schools and we're going to open up our institutions. Now, I feel at the end of the day, ASU understands that, or a lot of ASU staff understand that the people that are losing the most when schools are shut down for such extended periods are students. So in light of that, once they reach some sort of compromise with the government, they're usually keen to, okay, let's move past this, let's open it up while we wait for the government to do the needful.
So why hasn't government met up with that yet?
Okay.
The other angle of the question was, why do you think government hasn't fulfilled this agreement in 16 years? And it's not been one government. In 16 years, we've had at least maybe 3 presidents in a 16 years margin. Why do you think all of these people that have come into power have not met this agreement? Why do you think there has been a refusal to commit to this agreement with us?
Simply put, I'm going to say it in 2 words. I would call it misplaced priorities. Because globally, scholars are viewed as pace setters. They are viewed as these all-knowing beings of knowledge that are pivotal to the growth and development of a society.
Right.
But when we come to Nigeria, it seems that, first of all, by percentage, Nigeria will operate one of the most expensive governments in the world. Mm-hmm. In the world, we operate one of the most expensive governments. Why does the president have a convoy of over 100 cars? 50 of those cars can pay off half of the staff that the across Nigerian universities.
Right.
Some of these cars, depending on the level of customizations, maybe bulletproof options and things of that nature, they can go for up to 1 billion naira, 6, 7, 8, 900 million. Then the ones that are more cheaper, they go from 150 to 300 million naira. Those are the ones that are not bulletproof per se. But then we have and this convoy thing, it extends to, it goes beyond the president. We have senators that, when senators are moving, the whole road is shut down because of how many cars they're moving with. We do not do enough as government, the government does not do enough to justify what they spend. The government does not do enough to justify what they spend on the cost of governance. This money is going into private pockets. When there was this particular Nigerian senator, when he was in prison for corruption allegations, he got paid the entire time. The entire time he was in prison, he received his salaries and allowances and everything else, and he kept his seat as the senator. Why? Money, like, we always like to make it seem like, it's a lack of money. The money is there. That's why I also feel so cheated. The money is there. But then, what do we use the money to do?
That's the big question that we will leave on the heart of our viewers. What do we use the money to do? Well, this is where we wrap it up on this episode of Atlantic Society Watch. Thank you so much, Ekide, for coming on the show and giving us good insight.
I'm glad I could make it.
We are open for sponsorship of this program, jingles and advert placement, news and events coverage, personality, society and political interviews, product service promotions, and commercials. You can watch us live on www.atlanticnetwork.tv. We're also on Avo TV channel 205, Limex TV platform, Ifestec platform, Apple TV, Niger TV, and Iroko TV. Connect with us on all our social media channels. Subscribe, like, and share on Facebook and YouTube, Atlantic Television Network. On Instagram, Atlantic TV Network 1. We are on X on Atlantic TV Net. Remember that peace and unity are the pathways to progress. Thank you so much for watching. My name is Otaria Benjamin. Stay with us. Up next is International Tidbits.